I know we've been talking about EVs quite a lot lately. We've been talking about that Xiaomi one and all the failures, but we're not going to talk about that one today. All right?
Yeah.
In fact, I've got a clip from another new Chinese EV, which has been trying to break into the scene for a while. It's China's EV minivan.
Okay.
Okay. And it's kind of got like a cyberpunk type aesthetic to it. I think maybe a little bit of Cybertruck wannabe stuff there. Okay. So let's take a look at it. Give me a second here.
So bad. In my very humble opinion, that is one of the most hideous cars I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. But what's happening here is it's doing one of those safety tests where it's supposed to automatically brake if a pedestrian walks in front. That's a mannequin, by the way. It's not a real. That's not a real person. Yeah, I'll take it back. But you know, this is a very standard test that all modern cars usually do, because a lot, like modern cars, have got all these driver aids. You know. Yeah. You know.
I know. It's hard not to laugh at that.
I know. Charlie Sheen always pops in my mind. Anyway, the thing is, he's driving a car. Anyway, they've got driver aids, and one of them is like an emergency braking system, right? Which is great, by the way. I think it's a great additional feature to any car.
Of course.
I've never owned a car that has that.
Right.
And I kind of wish I had a car that has that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically what happens is if someone walks in front of it or a car brakes very quickly in front of you, it automatically hammers on the brakes and stops for you.
Yes.
And one of the very common tests is to take a mannequin and put it in front and see how well the car manages to stop. And this particular new Chinese EV, this is how it does. Let's see one more time. Let's have a replay in slow-mo. Like, that didn't go as they planned, did it? No. Looks like Steve Jobs the way they dressed him. Oh. Anyway.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Mannequin. So, speaking of EVs...
Yeah, so there was this thing I found. I don't know who this guy is. Is Senator Brown? Senator Sherrod Brown. I guess he's from Ohio.
Yeah.
Very interesting proposal he put out there.
Okay.
He's calling the U.S. to ban Chinese-made electric vehicles, like straight up, right? And this is different than what we've seen before. We've had a situation where people are like, well, put tariffs on it and it'll make it like unreasonable for them to want to sell them here, right?
Yeah.
He's calling for a straight up ban. Yeah. To protect the U.S. auto industry, not only that, because it's cheap stuff being dumped, subsidized by the Chinese government, right? Yeah. It's what he calls a state backed effort, basically an onslaught. Of the millions of these cars being dumped on your shores at a severe discount.
I got to preface something here. A lot of people might try to compare this to what happened in the 80s with Japanese goods coming in. And there were campaigns where you saw, like, I don't know, American politicians like with a sledgehammer smashing like a radio or like a Toyota or something. And here's the thing. When it comes to those, what happened in the past, I get the sentiment, and I think it was a bit stupid that they were doing that sort of thing. But when the Japanese came in with their cars, they were just providing a better product. Yes. That's all. Cheaper. They were literally better, fuel efficient, cheaper, and well built, better built. Yes. But they weren't doing what China's doing. And what China's doing is intentionally trying to undercut the market. Yes. So you have all these EVs. Now, the EV should cost, let's say it should cost $50,000 to manufacture. Yeah. So the company like BYD or whatever, they want to manufacture this to sell it in the USA. So the Chinese government says, I tell you what, we're going to give you the money to manufacture that so it doesn't cost you anything. Or we'll give you the majority of the money. Yeah. All these subsidies. So BYD can build the car for, say, $10,000 or less, right? Then they have all these special trade deals to ship things free or cheap to the USA on their cargo ships. It's all part of this whole developing nation status China has. So the companies actually don't have to pay a lot of money. Of course, I'm messing around with the numbers. It's hypothetical here. But basically, BYD, to send a car to the shores of America is cheaper than a local company like Ford or whatever in America to build an EV. Yeah. Way cheaper. So it's not fair. No. It's not a better product. It's a cheaper product. And what they're trying to do is dump all these cheap EVs on the market. And they've been doing it in like sneaky ways. For instance, in the EU and all over Europe, you've got all these shipping ports which are just full of Chinese EVs. And now the thing is, they're supposed to sell them before they get shipped over. But what they've been doing is they've been shipping them over before selling them.
Yeah.
So they sit there in the parking lot and they try to sell them then once they've arrived.
That's right.
Which is not the correct thing to do.
No.
So it's because normally you'd have to pay storage and stuff, but because it's shipped over there, it's just sitting there wasting space and everything.
So China's got graveyards full of these things.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of these EVs just sitting in graveyards running.
Yeah.
The government subsidizes it. They can't sell them. They flooded their own market, so now they need to push it off on other countries. So you got a lot of countries in South America, these more developing countries that are forced to buy these EVs.
Yeah.
And it's really causing a problem because they're poor quality.
Yeah.
They're a safety concern. They choke out any local market or competition because they're subsidized by a foreign government. And that's what they're going to try to do in America, right? So I was reading this proposal and I was like, absolutely agree with that. That's just they've not been proven to be safe vehicles. They've not been proven to be quality vehicles, and they've not been proven to be fair. You can't have a government that's subsidizing it basically at a economic warfare level, making it so they're building them at a massive loss to go undercut another economy that's making a product under fair capitalistic,
it's not fair trade. That's the whole point of the World Trade Organization and stuff. It's about fairness, right?
Yes.
And when you're not playing by the rules and when you're not fair, it's just not fair. It shouldn't be allowed, right?
No, I agree.
It shouldn't be allowed.
I agree.
It's when, by the way, when a foreign company wants to sell a car in China, there's tons of rules. They have to be part of a joint venture.
Yeah.
Only Tesla's exempt from that. But like Ford or Buick or whatever they want to sell, they have to go partner up with a Chinese company. They have this transfer of IP. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It can be Japanese. And then there's a huge tax. There's a tax. If you buy a foreign car in China, you pay a lot more. Yeah. There's like an import duty.
Unless it's a joint venture car. But then it's being built in China.
Yes.
Right? You have Hondas like Fengtian.
Yeah.
Or Bentian, sorry. Fengtian is Toyota. You have them being built in China. And so you're not getting the same car. Like, for example, I had a car. I had a car in China, right? It was a Japanese car, but it wasn't made in Japan, and it was wildly different than the one you can buy in even Vietnam.
Yeah, it was
or Japan
very
or
inferior.
Wherever. Yeah, it was much more
Lingmu Suzuki that you had. Yeah.
But it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So you see how this works.
But then that also means that the labor stays local. That the Chinese economy benefits from the sale of that car.
It's not right.
Yes,
I mean.
And what they want to do is they want to basically push out other competition in other countries, and they can't compete on that price level because the Chinese government's paid for it.
Yeah.
If the American government went and said, okay, we're going to pay for Ford to produce every car, then there'd be fair competition, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but then everyone would be like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, because then there's no one's making money because all the companies are selling things at a loss.
Yes.
You know that Porsche copy analog thing, which is a knockoff in my opinion. Yeah. You know that one?
Yeah.
They're selling that at a loss. Apparently, each one that they sell, they're losing like 30,000 RMB or whatever on each one. And that's not even including subsidies. They're just selling that at a loss so that they can get it into the market.
It's just like those...
It's like
those
Temu
big
and
companies
stuff.
like Temu and stuff, they'll sell stuff at a massive loss or free or whatever, right? Free 99.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to get into the market and undercut Amazon and those companies.
And then once Amazon and all of those fail because they cannot compete with free pricing, then they have a monopoly and then they can jack their prices up.
You're right.
And they've destroyed an entire industry abroad.
And the environment.
Yes, and the environment, absolutely.
Don't even get us started on the mining practices and forced labor and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the huge amount of waste that's gone into this whole EV subsidizing thing. I've covered it on my channel where there's literally fields, rotting graveyards of EVs, like you said, sitting around China that were just built for free, basically, through government subsidies. They turn out to be junk. No one wants them. But they can't really sell them because they've claimed that they've been sold. So they put them in a field and they rot away, leaking into the soil.
It's so China, though.
Yeah.
They've done this with so many things. Bike sharing.
Yeah, the bike sharing thing was insane.
There's so many parallels, but this is particularly bad for the environment to have all these cars leaching into the ground.
Not only that, the lithium mining to get the batteries, all the terrible things that have been done to the environment. Anyway, we're not here to go on and on about that. It's just, I'm sure you've seen in the background a car burning.
I just thought it was interesting to see a different approach into how we should be dealing with this going forward to avoid catastrophe.
Yes.
Because it goes further than that. It's a safety concern as well. We've seen what these cars do in auto braking tests. We've seen what these cars do with fires. We've seen what
the airbags don't deploy. I mean, the BYD Han, which is their flagship model, I've got footage of it being hit from in front and behind massively. The airbags didn't go off. We showed that Xiaomi last week got in a big front-end collision. No airbags went off, right?
People took videos of this stuff in China. So if this is a window into what you can avoid then you avoid it, right?
Never mind the fact that it's basically malware on wheels.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Spies on you. You have cars that are owned by a Chinese company that have party members in their company. Here we go with this whole like debate about what a Chinese company actually is.
Yeah, it's just the Communist Party, really.
You have the Communist Party in control of data flow, right? Yeah. Cameras, things that are being said, right? All of this stuff is technically could be grabbed by the Chinese government.
Well, think about it. Your car, not only does it track with its GPS exactly where you are at any given time, it has microphones built in for all the Bluetooth, GPS they're like, the hands-free stuff.
Play a song or whatever,
It's got cameras all around it, the new EVs and stuff, and inside too.
Yeah.
So potentially, it could all be turned on and they could record what you're saying in your car. They could film you. They could film your surroundings. If you're a government employee and you park on a military base, they could film all around you. And China knows this. That's why they banned Teslas from any sensitive place, because they think America's going to use a Tesla to spy on them. Yeah. So because they have that thought in their mind, that's exactly what they're doing.
You know it. You know it.
Exactly.
And we haven't had the opportunity or chance to have to deal with that, and hopefully we don't.
Yeah. So
that's why I just thought that was a great letter. It's like an open letter to President Biden or something. But anyway, it's links in the description. I thought it was an interesting read, and I agree with most of his points.
Yeah, I do think it's a big hazard, and it's not the same as the Japanese invasion of cheap economical cars.
I think that is a cheap way to make it equivalent.
Deflect.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not right. I think people are scared off by this. They're like, oh, it's just going to be xenophobia. No, this is not xenophobia. This is safety. This is national security. This is unfair trade. This is everything you can think of that the Chinese government is doing it's doing.
Yeah, it's protecting from like an unfair trade situation. I'll give you a quick analogy here, because I used to run this thing where I used to do screenings, right, and do Japanese pop culture and stuff. And there used to be a guy who would import the legitimate DVDs and merchandise from Japan, very expensive, but he'd import it, and he'd come and he'd set up a booth there, and he'd sell the DVDs, right? And they were expensive.
Yeah.
Then a guy came in with another booth where he used to get pirated from China, pirated DVDs, and like really cheap, and he's coming in with his booth selling it for like a fraction,
right?
Like sorry, that's a bit noisy, like a quarter of the price, maybe less.
Yeah.
You see how that's not fair, all right? You got the legitimate stuff being sold at a reasonable price, then you've got the knockoff fake stuff being sold cheap. So I had to make a decision on whether I was going to allow him to stay or not, because it wasn't fair for the guy who was putting in the actual effort. And it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyway, I just wanted to show you a couple of these flame things going on here, because one of them is kind of interesting. Not this one. It's just the typical Chinese BYD or whatever catching fire. I'll fast forward that one. Here you have like I believe this is a place where they change the batteries.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's like almost like a specialist training center or something for EVs, and there you've got one catching on fire. And fire extinguishers don't work, guys. Stop trying to use a fire extinguisher on an EV fire. It doesn't work. All right. It really doesn't work.
Huh.
Yeah, so stay, like, just...
I mean, logic, how would you know that,
Yeah.
How would these people know that if the government keeps saying buy these safe cars?
It's true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know you couldn't use this fire extinguisher.
Yeah, unfortunately, the chemical fire, it burns itself out. You can do what you want. You just have to wait for it to burn out.
Maybe like get away from it, get everything important away from it.
Yeah, just that. I think get the hell away from it. Yeah. I know what fire departments are doing now is they've got like almost like a container. They take it, they put it in, like submerge it in this kind of liquid.
Oh, interesting.
It still burns, but at least it's burning inside of liquid and can be contained.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of have to wait for it to burn itself out.
Oh,
they're fierce fires, and they start very quickly.
Yeah.
And I mean, remember last time we showed you that the guy's doors were locking themselves and he couldn't get out. Imagine, here's the scariest part, right? Because nowadays all these cars have got like these fancy door handles that pop out like with electricity.
What's up with that? Just make a normal door handle.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. There are like emergency ways you can try and figure it out, but in an emergency, you're not going to figure it out. So imagine your fancy electric door, soft touch opening thing. It's all connected to the battery, right? It's electric. So when your battery shorts out and catches fire, all that stuff's going to be dead. You can't get your soft touch extracting handles. All that doesn't work.
Maybe they pop out first. Who knows?
No, they don't know, dude. If the battery just dies, if the power dies. So You literally get trapped inside that car unless you've got some way of getting out the trunk or smashing the windows or whatever. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's scary.
I would stay away from Chinese cheap EV cars just from a safety point of view.
Yeah, but then you can open it up to let's just say, oh, I don't care about that stuff. Then there's so many more things you can talk about. Yeah. You know. Check.
Yeah, it's safe.
And he's like, ha ha. Ooh, smashes the chick.
It's just such nonsense. Why did you show me this?
That's not a prank.
No.
You just slapped your wife.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
This guy's sleeping.
Temporary tattoo.
What's a temporary tattoo of a wound? He starts freaking out.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's like, what the?
Sweet. Oh, that's gross.
I said it crosses the line.
When I close my eyes, I can almost see it. When I take a breath, you fill up my lungs. And if my mind works